childcare might be the only market where parents feel robbed. Workers feel underpaid. Providers feel squeezed. And somehow all of them are right. Start before sunrise. A parent is in the kitchen, half awake, packing strawberries into a lunch container while checking a phone that still has last night's tuition payment open on the screen. The number is big enough to sting, big enough to feel like a second rent payment. And still the feeling is not relief. It is dread, because paying the bill did not buy calm. It bought one more month of not falling behind. Now cut to the classroom. A worker is turning on lights, setting out toys, wiping a table, glancing at the schedule, already doing the mental math for the day. Who is out? Which child has been having a hard week? Who needs a gentle drop-off? This is intimate work, skilled work, tiring work, the kind of work where one distracted minute can matter. And the paycheck still lands with the insult of being both essential and not enough. Now cut again. A provider is staring at a staffing board and a budget sheet that does not look like a business writing high demand. It looks like triage. Wait list on one side, payroll on the other, rent due, insurance due, licensing requirements still there, a room that is technically full and still not giving anybody much room to breathe. That is the contradiction. Parents are paying a lot. Workers are earning too little. Providers are barely holding the doors open. Same building, same morning, same system. And that is what makes childcare feel so maddening. Usually when the price of something climbs this hard, people assume somebody must be winning, if the bill hurts that much. Surely somebody is cleaning up. That is how expensive things are supposed to work. But childcare keeps refusing that logic. The money is real, the pain is real. The relief never shows up. So the real question is not just, why is childcare expensive? It is, why does more money still not create stability? Why does paying more not buy peace for parents? Why does charging more not buy safety for providers? Why does doing this work still not buy a decent life for the people inside the room? And this is bigger than one annoying household bill. When childcare breaks, it does not stay politely contained inside one family's budget spreadsheet. It spills into work, into sleep, into promotions, into whether a second child feels possible, into whether everyday adulthood starts feeling less like a plan and more like a permanent scramble. But before we get to that wider damage, you have to see the trap underneath it. Because childcare does not behave like most things we buy. And if you miss that, nothing else about this system makes sense. Here is the uncomfortable starting point. Good childcare is expensive before anyone gets rich. That can sound like an excuse, until you picture what you are actually paying for. You are not buying a product that can sit on a shelf. You are not buying software that gets cheaper every time another customer logs in. You are buying hours of human attention. Close attention, repeated attention. The kind that has to show up in real time, every day with real people in the room. Take an infant room, this is where the math gets brutally simple. Imagine 4 babies, not 4 cartoon babies in a diagram. I was only just with Remit. 4 actual babies. One needs a bottle. One needs to be changed. One has been crying for 10 minutes because drop-off was rough. One just fell asleep and needs the room to stay calm. That room cannot be run like a crowded coffee shop. It cannot be optimized the way a delivery app can be optimized. One adult can only safely handle so much. That is not inefficiency. That is the service. And that is the first trap. In most businesses, more demand lets you spread cost wider. More orders, more users, more volume. In childcare, the ratio is the ratio. If the law says one worker can only care for so many infants, then that is the wall. You cannot talk your way around it. You cannot code your way around it. You cannot decide this month to squeeze in 3 more children because the electric bill went up. So right away, the system has a limit. A room can only bring in so much revenue per worker. and the younger the children are, the tighter that limit gets. Which means the most care-intensive ages are often the hardest to make financially stable. That is already a problem before you even start stacking the other costs. Then the stack begins. Rent, utilities, insurance, licensing, background checks, training, cleaning supplies, maintenance, admin, time, documentation. The 1,000 small costs required to run a place that parents trust with children who cannot protect themselves. And every one of those costs is attached to a human consequence. Rent goes up, tuition pressure rises, insurance rises, there is less cushion in the budget. A staff training day means somebody has to cover the room. A compliance task means a director is doing paperwork instead of solving the next scheduling fire. Nothing here is imaginary overhead floating in space. It lands on somebody, usually everybody. This is why just make it cheaper crashes so fast. Not because affordable care is a silly goal. Because in the current setup, cheaper for one side usually means more strain for another. Lower tuition can mean lower wages, or thinner staffing, or less margin when one thing goes wrong, or fewer available slots because a provider cannot keep offering care that loses money. That is why families keep feeling like they are being charged luxury prices for a service that still feels fragile. They are paying for something expensive to provide inside a structure that still does not fully fund the real cost. And then comes the part that really scrambles people's intuition. A center can look full and still be in trouble. A full room does not automatically mean a healthy business. Think about how strange that is. Most people hear there is a wait list and assume the owner must be doing great. The place is full. Demand is strong. Problem solved. Except no. Because in childcare, being full does not erase fragility. Sometimes it only hides it. Imagine a center opens the day with every slot spoken for. On paper, perfect. Then one worker calls out sick. Now the ratio breaks. That means one room cannot legally run the way it was supposed to. Parents start getting messages. Can somebody pick up early? Can somebody stay home tomorrow? Can a child shift rooms? The provider is scrambling. Other workers are stretched. Nobody is calmer because the building was full. Full just means there was no slack. That is the pattern. One vacancy and a classroom can shrink. One departure and the wait list gets longer. One bad flu week and the schedule starts collapsing in public. One family leaving can hit revenue. One open position can force directors to spend their time recruiting instead of stabilizing. The system looks crowded from the outside and brittle from the inside. Brittle from the inside. So when parents say, I am paying all this money, where is it going? That is a real question. When workers say, I am carrying all this responsibility, why am I still this stretched? That is a real question too. When providers say, we are full and still nervous, that is not obviously a lie. That is the design. And once you see that, the next question gets sharper. If the service is this expensive to provide, and the demand is already there, why does the money still disappear before it turns into stability? Why does the whole thing still feel one bad week away from trouble? The short answer is not luxury. It is survival. The money is not vanishing into luxury. It is being consumed by a system that barely holds together. That matters because the mind wants a villain. The bill is too high. So somebody must be overcharging. The wages are too low. So somebody must be hoarding the upside. The center feels strict, rushed, or constantly on edge. So somebody must be choosing profit over people. Sometimes there are badly run businesses. Of course there are, but that is not the main explanation for why this feels impossible across the whole system. The larger explanation is harsher than that. Even when people are trying to make it work, the structure keeps eating the money first. Start with wages. This is where the contradiction hurts most. Childcare workers are often paid far too little for what the job demands. That part is not complicated. They are trusted with safety, development, emotional regulation, and constant attention. They do physically tiring work and psychologically draining work at the same time. And then many of them look at the paycheck and think, seriously, for this? But now flip to the provider side. Say a center wants to raise wages meaningfully. Good, they should. But unless another source of money enters the picture, that raise often has to show up somewhere else, usually tuition. And families are already standing on the edge of what they can privately carry. So the system solves the contradiction in the ugliest possible way. It leaves the labor underpriced and hopes the workers absorb the gap. Not because the work is worth less, because the market cannot get blood from a family budget that is already tapped out. And then the consequences start cascading. A worker leaves for a job at a retail store that pays a little more and asks a little less, or for an office reception job, or for anything that does not require being hyper alert around children all day. Now a classroom loses a familiar face. Children have to adjust. The remaining staff have to cover. The director starts interviewing again. Training starts again. Consistency drops. Stress rises. The room may even close temporarily if the staffing line gets too thin. That is what makes this so punishing. The underpayment is not just unfair. It is destabilizing. It keeps turning into turnover. And turnover keeps turning into less reliable care, which then lands back on families as canceled days. Early pickups, longer wait lists, or the constant fear that this arrangement is one resignation away from falling apart. So the parent thinks, we are paying this much and still living like this. The worker thinks, I am doing work this important and still making choices like this. The provider thinks, we are charging numbers people hate and still praying nothing breaks this month. All three are seeing the same machine from different angles. Then there is the administrative load. And this part is easy to dismiss until you watch where the hours go. Licensing paperwork, safety logs, training records, subsidy documentation, inspection prep, scheduling, parent communication, incident reporting, food program forms, payroll, compliance tracking. None of that is glamorous. All of it is real, and in a system with thin margins. Time spent keeping the place legal and running is still time that has to be paid for. Then rent keeps climbing. Insurance stays expensive. Repairs do not ask whether this is a good month. Cleaning still has to happen. Supplies still have to be replaced. Meals still have to be served. Even the quiet costs keep talking, and they all want to be paid in actual money, not in the moral importance of the service. Then add the mismatch between what care costs and what many families can realistically pay. Some families qualify for help, some do not. Some qualify for too little. Providers can be serving obvious need while still dealing with late reimbursements, rigid rules or support levels that do not line up with the real cost of the room. Families above a subsidy cutoff can still be drowning. Families below it can still be unstable. The categories change. The pressure does not, and this is where the anti-blame hinge has to stay clean. Parents are not imagining the burden. Workers are not exaggerating the underpayment. Providers are not automatically lying about thin margins. The structure is forcing all three sides into impossible trade-offs at once. And when the sides in, a parent can look at the invoice and think, how is this not enough money to make care feel secure? A worker can look at the paycheck and think, how is this all this labor is worth? A provider can look at the books and think, how are we this close to the edge with every room already stretched? Those are not separate complaints. They are one structural truth, heard in three different voices. That is the reveal. Not that the system is cheap and someone stole the difference. Not that the pain is fake. The reveal is that the system is expensive and still not abundant. Money moves through it constantly. But instead of settling into security, it gets burned up, keeping the whole thing legal, staffed, and barely usable. And once that happens, the damage does not stop at the center door, because instability inside care starts reorganizing life outside care. That is where expensive turns into impossible, This is the part people feel in their lives even when they never use the phrase labor-intensive service model. They just call it being exhausted all the time, or falling behind, or wondering what they are doing wrong. A parent gets a text at 10:17 in the morning. Can you pick up early? Now the whole day bends around that message. A meeting is missed. A coworker covers. A boss notices. The calendar has to be rebuilt. Maybe that happens once and it is annoying. Maybe it happens enough times that the parent quietly stops volunteering for bigger responsibilities because reliable ambition requires reliable care. This is Jamal. Another parent starts choosing jobs based not on growth, but on survivability. Not the role that pays best. The role with the manager least likely to punish a 4:30 emergency pickup. That choice makes sense in the moment. It also changes the next 5 years. A couple sits at the table after bedtime doing the math on a second child. Not the happy math, the scared math. Can we do 2 drop-offs? Can we cover 2 tuition payments? What happens if one kid gets sick and the other center has a closure day? How many moving parts can one household survive before everything starts slipping? So they wait, or they decide no. Not because they do not want another child, because the structure around the first one already feels unstable. Someone else leaves the workforce for a while. Maybe they say it is temporary. Maybe it is, but temporary can mean stalled earnings, delayed promotions, lost retirement contributions, and a resume gap that keeps echoing after the child care crisis is supposed to be over. So the cost is not just the bill. It is the life shape built around the bill. And the psychological cost is real too. If you are constantly solving for pickup windows, backup plans, wait lists, closures, call-outs, and tuition spikes, then childcare stops feeling like one category in the budget. It becomes the thing every other category has to bend around. The thing sitting underneath work, under sleep, under relationships, under the question of whether your household is actually stable or just impressively reactive. That is why so many people end up internalizing this as a personal failure. We must be budgeting badly. We must be disorganized. We must be weak at logistics. Other people must be handling this better. But a lot of the time, that shame is just structural pressure wearing a private mask. The system is making ordinary households feel like they are failing a test that was never designed to be passable on household income alone. And this spills outward even to people who think childcare is somebody else's private issue. Employers feel it, teams feel it, productivity feels it. Reliable work depends on reliable care more than most workplaces want to admit. When care is unstable, workers become less available, less flexible, less promotable on paper, on paper, even when the real problem is that the support structure under them keeps shaking. It lands unevenly too. If you have grandparents nearby, flexible remote work, savings, or the ability to throw money at last-minute backup care, care, the system may still feel punishing, but sometimes survivable. If you do not have that slack, one disruption can become a crisis. One closure can cost income. One waitlist can delay a return to work. One tuition jump can erase the little margin you had. So childcare does not just reflect inequality. It reproduces it. It takes families with the least cushion and asks them to absorb the most volatility. And this is the reframe. Childcare is not a side expense. It is infrastructure hiding inside family budgets. That line matters because it explains why the impossible feeling keeps surviving every just plan better lecture. We built a system that modern work, household stability, and family formation depend on. Then we treated that system like a private consumer choice. We asked families to finance infrastructure with personal income. We asked workers to subsidize that infrastructure with low wages. We asked providers to operate it with almost no room for error. Then we acted surprised when everybody felt cornered. So when people say childcare feels impossible, that is not melodrama. It is pattern recognition. It is what it feels like when rising spending is not being turned into shared security. Families pay more and still cannot buy calm. Workers give more and still cannot secure dignity that matches the labor. Providers charge more and still cannot reach real stability. That is the last piece of the title promise. Childcare feels impossible even when everyone is paying more because the money is flowing into a structure designed around scarcity, private strain, and constant balancing at the edge. The impossible feeling is not the misunderstanding. The impossible feeling is the signal. It is the signal that parents, workers, and providers are being asked to carry costs that were never sustainably theirs to carry alone.